I have some thoughts I want to share with you on college football rankings. College football rankings. Dana Jeremiah will join us in a second, of course. He played at Appalachian State. They were a great 1AA program back before his FBS. I think this is funny. Like, we'll do this thing 2, 3, 4 weeks, even at the end of the season, where they'll look back at preseason rankings, and they'll say, man, what was that team? Oh, they don't know. They were so overrated. How could people have thought that? I mean, take Oklahoma, right? They lose their second straight number 1 overall pick. They lose Hollywood Brown. They lose other talented Sooners. And look where they're ranked and the expectations of them. We have no idea how Jalen Hurts, though he played in the spring and the fall, will morph into that system. We assume. I mean, look, Bo Nix was Mr. Football in the state of Alabama. His daddy was a great player. And they have a nasty defensive line. But Auburn was not good last year. They weren't a good football team. They were 3-5 in their league. They won to fire Gus Malzahn. And now all of a sudden, they're going to play Oregon, and we're supposed to assume that they're going to stick their flag in the ground and be great for the SEC. And we'll use the bowl games. Well, there's different levels of motivation for different teams. For example, Texas beating Georgia in the bowl game. Georgia was devastated by losing in the SEC championship game. There's no way you can't be. Whereas for Texas, that was absolutely their Super Bowl. I look at rankings this way. They are a necessary evil. Because without them, you can't have somebody who's number 1. Without them, you can't be overrated. Without them, you don't have college football. College football has to have a number next to a name. It's what makes you watch on a Saturday evening. Dana Jeremiah joins us. Of course, you see him on the NFL Network. Covers the Chargers on their radio network. Also have the Move the Sticks podcast. You'll get people, DJ, that'll say, oh, we just don't do the rankings until the 4th week or the 5th week of the season. I completely disagree. Even if the rankings are completely whack, I think they make the conversation and the excitement so much better.
100%. I mean, look, this is all about driving interest in your sport, and it's the same thing with the playoffs. Everybody freaks out about when they release the first polls in the playoffs, and why don't they just wait? And look, it drives conversation. It creates interest, which improves ratings, which is great for everybody involved in the entire sport. So I love it. I think it's what makes college football so fun. And there's so many teams. So many great teams that aren't going to see each other because of all the different conferences and the sheer number of teams. That's the difference between college and the NFL is there's arguments over who's better, whereas in the NFL, we get to see most of these teams play each other.
Dana Jeremiah joining us in the Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. Okay, so when I read this story about Ezekiel Elliott, and this is from Clarence Hill, covered the Cowboys for a long time, for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, I'll tell you which camp I think it comes from. Zeke Elliott and the Cowboys remain, quote, far apart in contract negotiations. While there's still optimism that a deal can be reached before the Cowboys open up their season against the Giants, they have not yet offered to make Elliott the highest paid running back in the NFL. I read that. I feel like it came from Zeke's camp. Who do you think it came from?
Ooh, usually when there's optimism from the side that would benefit in a deal getting done the most, and usually that's the team side. So when I actually heard you say that, saying hopefully he'll come in, that's kind of more of a pressure point that you're hoping he's going to get there, whereas the player, usually when stuff leaks on the player side, it's that, the gap is enormous and, he's going to miss a ton of time is the threat. So when I always kind of try and pick out what's the motive here, and with that one, it almost sounds optimistic, and that rarely comes from the player side.
Yes, but it's optimistic if and only if they make him the highest paid player in the game, highest paid running back in the game.
Yeah, well, and I think what the weird thing is, this is the battle on this one, is yes, he wants to be the highest paid player. I think there's people inside the Cowboys organization, at the position I'm talking about, that most of those people in that organization do believe he's the best running back in the NFL. The get around is that a lot of people in the NFL think that Todd Gurley contract was just a bad contract, and they don't want to trade off that contract. So that's where I think we get some difficulty here with the Zeke thing is, I think both parties agree. You know, if you gave him truth serum, he's the best running back right now that's got a chance to get paid. But the Gurley contract is a tough stumbling block.
You know what? You know what it reminds me of? This reminds me of Darrelle Revis and the Jets, because Darrelle Revis and the Jets was using Nnamdi Asomugha's contract, and everyone knew Nnamdi Asomugha's contract was a terrible contract. Yeah, right. So you're sitting there going like, "Wait, why are we using that? That's not a good contract. I'm not going to use that one. That's not a comp." You know, it's like which is it? The median and the mean, when you take out the top, when you take out the bottom, when you take the average. That's kind of right? That's kind of what we're looking at.
Well, you announced where I went to school at the top of the interview, so you know I'm not answering that question.
Apparently, Appalachian State, not a school of higher learning for math.
We're the Harvard of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Harvard of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Daniel Jeremiah joined. Do you think he shows up? He'll be in uniform first week of the season? Best guess.
No. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say I think it'll get done. I think he'll miss one game, and I think it'll get done.
At what number?
I'm going to say they're going to give them a number they can shop. Some portion of the deal will be better than Gurley's. That's usually the compromise in a win. Whether that's in the overall guaranteed, the average per year, like it'll be one area, not the other. That'll be the compromise.
What about Melvin Gordon? You cover the Chargers for a living.
Yeah.
They seem dug in. He seems dug in. What happens there?
I honestly thought it would come to an end this week, and that's based off no information, just kind of a gut feel. When you kind of look at the position of strength the Chargers are in this deal, I thought, okay, Melvin's going to come in and get himself a good week or two before the season to get ready to go, and he'll be in camp. But now we get to the point where if he's not here by this weekend, now I think it sounds like, okay, maybe he is dug in, and this could go on for quite some time. So these things are impossible to read, Doug. But when I, looking at it as of a couple weeks ago, I anticipated that we'd probably see him at this point in time, and it just hasn't happened.
Are you mad at me for my tweet about Andrew Luck?
No. I look, everybody, there's a lot of strong opinions on this. From both sides. I know that it's hard anytime you have a reaction. I think if maybe you had that tweet with maybe added a little bit more to it and it had come 2 days after the fact, after everybody had kind of digested everything, I don't think you would have got quite the same blowback. But I think the fact that it was immediately right after that, everybody was pretty raw, and that's why it got you some grief there.
Isn't that the beauty of it, though, right? Like if you wait, you kind of miss it. You miss the boat.
No, look, hey, we had a line in our scouting room, Doug, that I had an old scout, a veteran, did it for 40 years, and he gave me advice when I was a young scout. He said, "You're better to be strong and wrong than to be weak and right. They will remember your argument more than they'll remember your grade." So, in other words, like it was. One way or the other, let us know what you think and be passionate about it. So people can be upset about it or love it, but you went strong. You didn't straddle the fence.
It does feel to me though like a different mentality, and maybe it's not as much luck as much as us in the media or fans or social media, right? Because this wasn't how. This had other players that when Calvin Johnson retired, it wasn't the same feeling. Barry Sanders retired, it was, what is he, crazy? And those are positions that aren't protected positions the way the quarterback is. I mean, you're talking 99% of the people, at least in the media and in social media, are like, oh, I totally get it. But it feels like a different mentality now in the NFL where there's so much money. And there's so much fear of the ramifications of playing too long in your career that the old days of, tape it up, spit on it, and go out there, it's not that they don't exist. They just exist in more limited instances than they used to.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. If you found out some of the injuries that the older quarterbacks in the league have played through, it was a little bit different. I mean, I'm doing the Charger games. Phillip Rivers, obviously notorious for having played with torn ACL, played with a whole host of injuries that I'm sure people don't know about. Same with, I'm sure, with Brady and Roethlisberger and Eli Manning and Drew Brees. So it's, look, I'm always careful that I'm not going to tell another guy what he should or shouldn't do. And he did not look happy, is the way I would describe it. He just looked like he was a very down guy. And I would never ask anybody, no matter what their job is in life, how much it paid or what they got out of it. If you're miserable, I mean, look, make a change, So I don't fault him. I don't fault him on that. And my take on this thing, when I saw it, was after kind of digesting it, Doug, I'm looking at it from a personnel standpoint. If I'm Chris Ballard, I'm almost grateful that he made the decision that he made. Because some people have said, okay, well, maybe you go on IR and then you can come back later in the season after you've had a chance to get healthy. And my thing is, man, I don't want kind of that cloud hanging over the team. Is he coming back? Is he not coming back? Who can assume that leadership position? And I don't know, do I assume a leadership because Andrew's going to be back? Is he not? Look, there's clarity. There's something to the fact they cleaned his locker out within 24 hours. I mean, it is over. This is a decision. We've moved on. And I think that in the long run is going to be better for them than having him kind of hang around and wonder if he's in it or not.
How much different is their team? You're getting ready to prepare Chargers, Colts. How much different is their team with Jacoby Brissett?
I think Jacoby Brissett is a NFL starting caliber player, and I think that puts him as somebody to kind of put it in numbers. I think he's his ceiling would be a top 15 to 20 quarterback in the NFL. Andrew Luck's ceiling is to be a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. So that's the kind of gap you're talking about. They can win games with him. They can be a playoff team. But I don't know with the roster the way it is right now. I think with Andrew Luck, it's a Super Bowl contender. I think with Jacoby Brissett, it's a playoff contender. Daniel Jeremiah joining us in the Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. Okay, let's peruse a little bit around the league. Jimmy Garoppolo has come out and said, hey, I throw risky passes in the preseason, right? They're basically like, I know I've sucked, but there's a reason that I've sucked. Are you buying that? Look, I've played for coaches, and I've been around coaches that will teach that, especially in practice, 7-on-7, try and see if you can squeeze some balls in, test things out. That's why you got the opportunity to do that. Some coaches will tell you in the preseason you can take some chances. I think it's pretty simple. They had no pass protection early on in the preseason, and he didn't play well. He didn't throw the ball well even when he did have protection. He was rusty. And I just got done watching the tape from last week against the Kansas City Chiefs, and I thought he played really well and looked comfortable. And I think this offense suits him. I think he's got some rust to knock off. I think everybody way overreacted to what they've heard or what they've seen from him in practice and in the preseason. I'm still bullish on this 49ers team. I think they're going to be pretty good.
Kansas City Chiefs, it feels like they've done some things defensively. I have some questions about running game, right? Because statistically, the running game changed once Kareem Hunt was suspended from the team. Chiefs better, Chiefs worse, Chiefs the same. Your expectations?
I think that their offensive line is good, not great. But I can make a case. I think defensively they're going to be much better. When you have Frank Clark, just watching him today, I mean, he's a top 5 pass rusher in the NFL. He's a tremendous player. He's a much better player than Dee Ford. So you've upgraded off the edge. And then you have Chris Jones, who's as good as it gets as an interior pass rusher. I think their pass rush is going to be really good. We'll see what the Honey Badger can give them in the back end, but quite honestly, they can't be worse than they were in the secondary last year. So I think they'll be better on defense, and I still, Tyreek Hill not being suspended is a huge impact on this team because he changes everything in how you defend this team, and I can't see them not scoring a zillion points again. So I think they're going to be even better. We'll see what the record looks like, Doug, but defensively, I think they're better, and I don't see Pat Mahomes doing anything but improve as such a young player.
Yeah, I'll give you a team that literally has not been discussed in national radio except for right now, and they were a hell of a football team last year, and I'm wondering what they look like this year. The Chicago Bears. Right? They lose they lose their defensive coordinator.
Yep.
Right? But the players are still back. Mitch Trubisky, like the biggest knock against Trubisky, and I do think he obviously has a little bit lower ceiling, but big knock against Mitch Trubisky. He just hadn't played a lot of football, right? So now he's played a lot of football. And remember the Rams 2 years ago, they lost their first home playoff game, and of course next year they go to a Super Bowl. I've never heard anyone discuss the Bears. What are they this year?
I think they're a good team, Doug. I think that I could see their win total maybe coming down a couple from last year. To me, I feel like
because the division's better.
The division is better. I think Minnesota's better. I think Green Bay is going to be better defensively. Detroit is not. I mean, Detroit's not a great team, but they're just continue to get more physical with their identity and who they're bringing in. And I love Chuck Pagano, but this defense was so clicking with Vic Fangio. I think there is a little bit of an adjustment there. I actually see this offense being a little better than they were last year with David Montgomery. I feel like is an upgrade at running back. I think defensively, maybe it's just a small, subtle step back. But I think more about that division kind of catching up to them more so than them slipping.
Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota? Which of the two will be back with their current team next year?
Man, I'll say Jameis. I think that Jameis, when you look at it from the standpoint of what's behind him, I think he's going to get such a long look this year, and I think that it might be rough early on because their offensive line's not very good, but I think he'll show enough and grow in this offense, and he'll be that guy. Look, he's got it's Blaine Gabbert and Ryan Griffin behind him. I mean, there's nobody pushing him. Whereas you go to Tennessee and with Ryan Tannehill on the on-deck circle, I think the second there's some struggle there, that'll be it. So I'll say Jameis has a better shot. But to be honest with you, Doug, I wouldn't be shocked if both of them move on after this year.
How alarmed should Patriots fans be that right now they don't have their center and they just traded for 2 offensive linemen?
I stopped doubting or wondering about that team a long time ago. The Dante Scarnecchia is going to he'll find a way. It doesn't matter who you give him. He'll get the best out of them. And the quarterback, you look around the league, Doug, there are very few good offensive lines. And one thing that helps is when you got a quarterback is like the great Febreze. He covers up all that smell, and that's what Tom Brady can do.
DJ, great stuff, man. Look forward to hearing you during the season. Obviously, the Move the Sticks podcast is fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. Hi, I'm Doug Gottlieb from Fox Sports Radio, and you need to subscribe to the Fox Sports Radio YouTube channel where you can hear and see me. Why not? Plus, everybody else who's awesome here on Fox Sports Radio.